Hey friends, it's me, Patrick God. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're gonna cover a part of an authentication process or a user sign-up process, you name it. I think lots of you guys wanted to see an implementation for an email verification or confirmation, again, you name it, and also a forgot password feature. So the main part of this tutorial is we will implement the verification of an email address and also a feature for forgetting the password. So if the user forgot the password, then the user will be able to reset it. And by the way, if you are a student of my Blazor e-commerce course, I know you want to have this thing with the Blazor WebAssembly frontend, and it is coming. And depending on when you're watching this might be already implemented and uploaded to the course. Please, little patience still, and you will get this feature soon in the Blazor e-commerce course. All right, but for now, what we're going to do is we will start from scratch. So we will implement a quick user registration and login process with no JSON web token. I've got another video for that, so please check out the info cards here. There are a couple of info cards here in this tutorial. Maybe you want to have a look there, but for now here we will only, well, not only, it's still 1 hour of a tutorial where we will register a user, store this user in the database. So we will also use entity framework core migrations, code first migrations, store this user together with the password hash and the salt, and also tokens for verifying the email address, and also a token for the password request, the password reset request. All right, so register user, log the user in, verify the email, and reset the password. So this is what we're going to do. And if you learned something and like this video, then I would really appreciate it if you click the like button, maybe subscribe to my channel. It does make a difference. Thank you so much for doing that. Don't forget the bell icon to get a notification when a new video is online. Also, maybe you want to have a look at my newsletter, because then you get these videos here earlier in your inbox, and you will also get early access to my upcoming courses, for instance to the big .NET web developer bootcamp, where we cover the backend, the front end, and also some other stuff like Git, agile software development, DevOps, maybe stuff like that. And the last thing today, it's a mix of tea and coffee. I know, maybe it sounds disgusting, but first it was coffee, and when the coffee was empty, I put some tea on top. Still tastes pretty nice. So thank you so much for all your support, guys. I love you forever. And as you will see in the video, it is late for me, at least. It's really late, 10:30. It's late for me. So sun is asleep. I'm making this video. Thank you so much for watching already, and now enjoy the tutorial. All right, Visual Studio 2022. We create a new project, and this shall be an ASP.NET Core Web API. We call this verify email and forgot password tutorial. Isn't this a great name? Okay, I think you get the idea then. We leave everything as it is. So .NET 6 is our target framework, HTTPS, all right. Controllers, yes, the traditional controllers. I don't want to use minimal APIs here. And we enable open API support because we will test this with Swagger. We are not going to build a front end here. We will use Swagger to test our endpoints. And when this is created, this project, then the very first thing we need, I see something in my taskbar. There it is. Okay, let's close this. And let's just have a look. Yeah, all right. Everything's fine. Okay, empty project here. You know what this is, I guess. You see the standard default example with a forecast class, forecast controller, and so on. But I really don't want to go deep into that. For that, we've got another tutorial, the Web API and EF Core tutorial with .NET 6. Almost 200K views by the time of recording this here. So guys, thank you so much for all your support. Maybe you also want to like and subscribe. Thanks by the way, it does make a difference. But now to our actual tutorial. What we want to do is we want to register a user, we want to log this user in, but this user should have to verify the registration first. So the idea is to send an email. We won't send an email. Got another tutorial for that, so please check this one out. Send email, it's actually from last week. We can do that. But what we will do here then to enable that with the verification is we will create a token, which is in essence a random string with random characters, and this will then be used to verify the user email address. And then after that, we will also implement forgot password, the forgot password feature. And this is in essence pretty similar. We will also create a token for that. Okay, I talked enough about that. I guess let's implement that stuff. So the first thing is the user model, and for that, let's just add a new folder. Call this models, because we will also need some more stuff. We will use some DTOs, data transfer objects. But first, the actual model is the user, and we will also use Entity Framework Core code first migrations to add a users table, and this user here then in the database. Definitely need more coffee because it's late, and I don't know, can't focus that much, but I'm sure you will learn a lot today. So please stay with me here. First thing we need is an ID, then the next thing already the email address. Let's just call this email, and this shall be an empty string. Then the next thing is the password, and if you followed my other tutorials already, you know that I want to use a byte array with a password hash and also a password salt. Let's just initialize that with a new byte array. By the way, you can also see that in my Skillshare class, so maybe you want to have a look there if you haven't already, but also in the .NET Jumpstart or the Blazor e-commerce course. So lots of stuff where we use similar approaches and go deeper there, of course. So these are password hash, password salt, the only byte array properties. The next thing now, already, this is what I wanted to tell you, is the verification token, right? So when a user registers, we will create a verification token. This has nothing to do with a JSON Web Token, for instance. It's just a series of random characters, and then the user has to call a certain endpoint where the user will use then this verification token, and we will then check, is this token valid, by just looking for a user with that token. And if we find a user, then the user, well, is verified. All right, so this is in essence the whole magic. And what we also want to do is we want to store the date when the user called the certain endpoint, because then we know that this is done and the user is actually verified. Okay, so this is for the verification. And now already for the password reset feature, or forgot password, password reset, forgot password, it's the same thing in essence. We want to use password reset token. And this is essentially exactly the same thing, right? But the date time property here has another function. This will actually be the expiration date for this password reset token. Maybe this should only be available for 1 day, just out of security reasons, right? Okay, so that's it. We've got an ID, email, password hash, and salt. Verification token, verified at, password reset token, and reset token expires. So this is our model. Of course, you can do much more here, but I tried to make this quick. I think this tutorial will take some time nonetheless, but you know, just want to give you a jumpstart tutorial here, so you just get the idea pretty quick. Okay, so this is our model, and now let me already use code first migrations with Entity Framework Core here. So we've got this boilerplate here out of the way. First thing we need are NuGet packages. So right click the project, manage NuGet packages, click on browse, and then Entity Framework. Don't need the tools, just Entity Framework. Could also install this along the way when we create the data context, but let's do it this way. For instance, this time. So Entity Framework Core it is. And then we also need design. shared design time components for Entity Framework core tools. All right. And then since I want to use SQL Server, we will also need this thing here, Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL Server. So these are the three. And then we also need the EF Core tools. And for that, we open the Package Manager console. Can do that with View, other windows. And then where is it? Package Manager console. There it is. All right. And then make sure to change the directory to your actual project. Right, so here you see the project file, and then we can do that .NET tool install -- global, and then .NET EF for the Entity Framework core tools. You see it here, it's already installed in my case, but for you guys, I uninstall this and then install it again. And now it's here, 6.05, even got a new version. Isn't that nice? And with .NET EF, we can double check. There it is. All right, and you see this here, database, DB context, and migrations are the commands that are available. Again, got videos about that to go, or where we go much deeper. For now, let's just create a data context next, and then use the migrations here. All right, so we've got all the packages, we've got the .NET tool, and now for the data context that enables us to access the database, where we then want to store a user and then see the verification and the password reset token. This is why I'm doing this, so I can really show you how these tokens look then in the database. So for that, we add a new folder to be a bit organized at least. So data it is, and here we add a new class, call it data contexts, and this inherits from or implements the DB contexts. All right, and now we can use Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Let's make this global maybe, and also move this to the program CS, great feature of C#10 global usings. Well, let's see if it's really that great. I think you might have more experience by now with these global usings, right? Is it maintainable to use global using directives? I don't know. But in our case, in this tutorial, this should work. We need a constructor here. So enter CTOR, hit tab twice. Then the argument here is a DB context, options, data context, call this options. We use our base constructor. Next step is the data set. This is important. So with prop and then DB set of type almost user. Yep, that's the one. And let's also move this to the program CS. So global using. All right, let's call this users. And usually you just pluralize the name of your entity for the table name, because this is the table name. And now what I'm going to do, you see this warning here, and I hate this. And at least here in the data context. So let's just use a set here, and then the warning is gone. And the last thing, this time I'm doing it here, the connection string for our SQL Server Express database, in my case. And we can do it with the app settings, for instance. So adding it here, a connection string, and then using the connection string here, or we can do it like that. We use overrides, and then it shall be on configuring. So protected override void on configuring. And here now what we do is options builder, use SQL Server. That's correct. And here now we enter our connection string, and this is, I guess, the only thing where you really have to pay attention. because this might be different in your case. But if you installed SQL Server Express, totally forgot to tell you, you have to install SQL Server, of course, on your machine or your server or wherever you want to do this here. And let me just Google for SQL Server, maybe, right? So SQL Server. I know it's on the other screen. Here it is, SQL Server Express. This is what I Googled for, and here is the first hit. It should already be the right one, and please use here this one. You can also use the developer edition or Express. Download now and you're good to go. And then there's also another great tool, which is the SQL Server Management Studio. This thing here, right? So you can download this stuff for free as well. And with that, then you get this thing here. Just open it, connect to it. I've got some databases here already, but we will create a new one. And then you're good to go. And if you do it like that, you've got SQL Server Express, then your connection string should look like that. So server equals, and then SQL Express, and then the database name. Let's just call this UserDB, for instance, and then trusted underscore connection is true. All right, so server is SQL Express, database is the UserDB, and trusted connection set to true, and then you're good to go. And the last thing regarding the Entity Framework core boilerplate is registering our DB context with builder services, and then add DB context, and we want to use our data context here. And this shall be it, actually. All right. And let's make this global as well. Okay, so this should be it. This is now all the EF core stuff, and now we can run the migrations. So back to the package manager console. Again, make sure to be in the project directory. And then we say .NET EF migrations at initial for the initial migration. And the build failed. Awesome. .NET build. Let's see what's wrong here. DB context options could not be found. Okay, this is interesting. Entity framework core does not exist. But we've got it here. All right, maybe we rebuild the solution. We go back to the program CS. And all of a sudden the errors are gone. Let's try that again. Build succeeded. You're my witness. I changed nothing. I had to rebuild this. And I think that this version here, 17.1.6, is not a good version. Visual Studio 2022 worked better, the Community Edition worked better with the previous version. But that's just my opinion. But maybe you've got similar experiences here. So if so, please tell me that in the comments. It would be really interesting if you did. So now with that migration, we've got this folder here, initial, and you see we will create a table, users with an ID that is incremented by default automatically, and all the other stuff. Primary key is the ID, and in case we want to roll back the migration, then this table would be dropped. So now let's enter .NET EF database update, and with that the database will be created, even though this command is called update. And now let's refresh our database server, and there it is, our user database with this table here. This table here can be ignored. EF migrations history, this is just for entity framework, but here now we see our users table, and of course this is empty. But that was already a lot in, I don't know, 15 minutes maybe. And next is actually registering a user. And for that, we first create a user register request model. So right click our models folder, add class, and then user register requests. That's the one. And I just want to use an email and a password. All right, so we've got the email address here, by default string empty. And then we've got another string with which is the password. All right, also string empty. And then another one called confirm password. So we make sure that the user entered the password the user wanted to enter. And now let's use also some annotations. So we can use the following attributes here, and the web API will check that for us. We need another namespace here, system component model data annotations. If you're wondering what I'm doing here, I'm just pressing Control and period. This is the same as using the quick fix menu here. Actually, there should be a light bulb, but now there is no light bulb. I don't know why. So you can also just press, oh, now there it is. So using system component model data annotations. This is the one I'm looking for. Also, we can add email address. So we check if this really looks like an email address. Now the password, of course, is also required. And we can also say that the minimum length should be 6 characters, for instance. And now here, confirm password. Of course, you want to check if these two strings are the same. So we enter required and then compare, and then the name of the other property, which is password. And with that, the web API will then check if password and confirm password are exactly the same. So that's great. And this is already our user register request model. And now, to be able to test that, we need another controller. We've got our weather forecast controller here already, but now let's create another one. So add controller it is. We create an empty API controller, full control here for us. No generated code, or not much generated code. And let's just call this user controller. And I know I already can see the hate comments in this YouTube video. I'm implementing a fat controller here. I'm not using services and not injecting the services. We will inject the data context, of course. But again, I just want to make this quick and don't use any services here. But if you want to see that, then please have a look at my other tutorials or courses. There, of course, we will use, at least I try to use best practices with thin controllers, kinda, well, let's not call it stupid controllers, but simple controllers that just forward the requests and then inject other services. So usually you would, for instance, use here a constructor, of course, and then inject another user service, for instance, or an authentication service or whatever. Do all the logic there, and then the controller would just forward the request and return the response. But here now, let's just put all the logic in there, and I will push this to GitHub, of course, so you will get the complete code. I get the idea. I know that this is not best practice, but with this disclaimer, I hope we're good. All right? Okay. So first, there it is, the constructor. We need the data context, so let's just inject this thing. And here we just call this context. And I want to create and assign this field here, add an underscore. And again, also, I know that we can configure Visual Studio in a way that it will add this underscore here by itself. But with every update, this configuration is gone. And I don't know why. I don't like that. So I'm too lazy to configure it again and again and again. But if you have a tip for me so that this configuration here stays with every update, then please, again, tell me that in the comments. Thank you. All right, so we've got our constructor, and now we can already create our method for registering a user. So not prop, public async task iaction result. That's okay. Let's call this register. We will use the UserRegisterRequest object, call this request, and let's also add the HTTP method already, which is HTTP post, and like that we can enter the endpoint name, so change that to register. So the complete URL would be API/user, which is the controller name, and then /register. All right. Okay, and now the actual method. Well, what we want to do is first we want to check if this user already exists. So maybe there is this email address in our database, so we don't want to register this user again. And we check this with context users. With that we can access all the users, and then with any and a little lambda expression here, u for user, and then email if this is equals. So if this is request email, then we just return a bad request, and then user already exists. And by the way, I will use these things here more often, as you will see in the next couple of minutes. And I will try to remember to tell you that again. It is not that smart to return too much information like that. For instance, when we try to log in the user and then we say, hey, cannot find the user, the email address must be wrong, or hey, we've got the email address but the password is incorrect. Maybe this is information you shouldn't, well, you shouldn't tell this the user that is trying to log in, because this might be an attacker. And if an attacker knows, hey, this email address exists, that's great. Then I can be sure that just the password is wrong and we can run a brute force attack or anything else, because we know that this email address is at least correct, right? So you should not tell this the user, although I think it's a better user experience, of course. But well, there are people out there that want to use these information and do bad stuff or fun stuff. I don't know, in their opinion, at least. Okay, and with that out of the way, we can create our password hash, and for that we need another method. But let's write this method here already. Create password hash, and this looks like that. We will use the request password, and then we will use two out parameters, and these will be our byte arrays for the password hash, and also the password salt. Maybe we can put these in new lines. Let's try to format this. Doesn't work. Yeah, of course, because the function is not there. So let's write this method first. Create password hash. So what will this look like? What will this be? Private void create password hash. Again, this gets the passwords as a string. So this is the one from the request. And again, the out parameters, password hash and out bytes, password salt. Okay, and this formatting does not work. All right, anyways, and this is pretty simple. What do we, or simple, I don't know if it's really simple, but it's a small method. We will use a cryptography algorithm. So using, and then var hmac, and I call this hmac because we will use the hmac SHA 512 algorithm, like that. And of course we have to use another reference, system security cryptography. And in here now, what you want to do is you want to set the password salt, which is the key of this instance. So with this instance, a key will be generated. You can see it here, instance of the hmac SHA-512 class with a randomly generated key. So this will be our salt. And with that salt, then we can create a password hash with hmac compute hash, and then system text encoding UTF-8 get bytes, and then password. And now can still not format this. And now we get our password hash. Now, a short hint about that. Why are we doing it like that? Why the salt? Well, the thing is, if we would just use the algorithm without a salt or with the same salt every time we use this algorithm, then the password, the same password would always result in the same password hash. And I already talked about some people that want to do bad things here. And these people might want to use a password hash and get to the plain text password with that. There are algorithms that are not that secure anymore. I think MD5 is a good example. It's always this one way, and a password would always result in the same hash. So I don't know, if you use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, use the password, the cryptography algorithm, then the hash would be ABCDE, I don't know, something like that. And another user uses the same password, and then the password hash is also the same. So you would see that these users have the same password. And again, from that hash, you might get to the plaintext password. But this is different with the salt. If you use a salt, and this is in essence just a random series of characters again, or of, here you see this is a byte array, then this would also be put into this algorithm, and then the hash looks different. It's another hash, although the password might be the same. Okay, I hope you get the idea now. And this is why we use a salt and a hash, and the salt will also be stored in the database because we need the salt to then verify if the given password on login is correct. All right, enough about that. We've got our password hash and password salt. And now we can create the user finally. As I told you, this tutorial will be a bit longer. So here is our new user. And with that, we can say our email is this thing. Password hash is password hash. Password salt is the password salt. And then the verification token. We can already set this. So this is maybe new if you know my other tutorials. This is something we didn't do or haven't done before. Create random token. This is a function we have to write again. So now let's create this function here. And again, this one is pretty small. So private string create random token. And here we simply return convert to hex string or base 64 string. In essence, doesn't really matter. Hex string, there's no information in this token. So as I said, it's not similar to a JSON Web Token, for instance, where you then store some claims or something. It's just a random series of characters. And that's why we can use that random number generator. And then let's say get bytes. And then, for instance, 64. All right, so this will be a long token, and we can use it here, and we will see how this looks in a minute in the database. But with that, now we've got our object, and now we have to store this user object in the database with context users add user, and then await context save changes async. And after that, we return OK. Well, we could return the user, or we just say user successfully created. All right, so let's test this. I mean, it's half an hour, but also only half an hour for a simple registration process, right? So this is actually pretty great, I guess. We see no user here. All right, now let's try to register one. But first, maybe we can check the annotations. So let's try this out. This is the great thing of Swagger here. We already see the object here, for instance, the user register request, and also a suggestion here. So what we can do, for instance, first let's try to use a wrong email address here. So let's hit execute, and it says the email field is not a valid email address. Great, it's totally correct. Now let's say we use this as a password, it says the field must be a string or array type with a minimum length of 6. All right, it's true. Totally true. And now it says confirm password and password do not match. Now, of course, you can customize these messages here just real quick. We can, for instance, just enter error message. Please enter at least 6 characters. Dude. All right. It's rebuilding. And now let's see. We remove this, it executes, and we get 2 error messages. Confirm password is not the same. And please enter at least 6 characters, dude. Great. Love this. And now let's just use user@example.com, string. We hit execute and user successfully created. Awesome. There it is. And now let's refresh this. There is our user. We've got the email address, password hash and salt, and this is the token. This is how this thing looks like, right? Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Okay, so registration works. And now the next step is logging in. So back to Visual Studio, we need another model. And this model now is called user login request. And this essentially can be copied here. Let's go back. Required email address is true. Required is true here as well, but not the minimum length. And this should be it already. Let's also add the using directive. Yeah, this should work. And now we can also, yep, you want to rebuild. We can add or implement the login method. I'm a lazy guy, so let me just copy this. And we call this now login, and also here login, and we use the user login request. Now we wanna, let's just remove this stuff here because this is kind of new. Then what we want to do is we first want to get the user, right? So var user is await. Wow. Context users first or default async. Yep, that's totally right. Nice. IntelliCode at its best. Okay, maybe we can remove this. Yeah. So now you can see everything. And if now the user is null, and this is what I talked about earlier. Here now we can return a bad request where we can say user not found. And again, this might be too much information, but for this tutorial here, for the learning purposes, let's just do it like that because we can test this and see, does it really work, right? As we want it to. The next check here is already verified at. We just want to see, is there a value? And if there is no value, this simply means that the value the user is not verified, and we return not verified. Okay, and add a semicolon, of course. And now the last thing is now, what am I doing? Is now the verification of the password, and for that we need another method. So let's just copy this thing and call this now not create password hash. We call this verify password hash. And this now takes also the password, but these are no out parameters anymore. And in here now we say using var hmac, and then we give this thing the password salt. Okay. Hope now things become clearer. And with that, we've got our salt, of course, so we don't need it here. Now we try to compute the password hash. So let's call this computed hash. Computed hash, all right. And this is hmac compute hash. So the same thing in essence. And now to check if the new computed hash and the password hash are the same, we return computed hash sequence equal. We have to use sequence equal here because these are byte arrays. So with that, we compare these two byte by byte. A simple equals would not work. And then here the password hash. All right, so this is, yep, this is true. We have to change the return type to bool. And now this is our verified password hash method. And here now we use if verify password hash with the request password and the user password hash and the user password salt. So if this returns false, then again return bad requests, and we say password is incorrect, for instance, or wrong password, something like that. And again, maybe too much information, but for the learning purpose here, I think this is good. And if everything is all right, then we simply return something cool like welcome back, and then the email address, because we have no username, so user email. Nice. All right, so this is our login methods, and I would say we can test this as well, although of course this will not work because the user is not verified yet. We have no endpoint for that. So maybe let's put this here so we can at least check if this works, right? User not found, password is incorrect. And if these two are okay, then we should get the not verified. So let's save this. And there we are. We can use the same stuff here in essence. So let's try this out. What about user1 at example.com? User not found, correct. What about string1? Execute. Password is incorrect, all right. And now both not verified. Awesome. So this is the login method for now. And maybe now we get to the function that you are waiting for. And now after maybe 40 minutes, we will implement our verify method, okay? So again, let's copy this and paste this here. This is now called verify. Also here, verify. And now the idea here is totally up to you in essence. We can use another request object, another DTO, where we then put the verification token, or we just say string token and get this from the query parameter. This should also work. And again, the idea is that upon registration, you send an email to the user with this token, or even better, the complete URL where you put this token in the query parameters. All right, so this would be the crucial step. Send an email. Again, if you want to know how to send an email, check out last week's video on my channel. Pretty easy with MailKit, and then you can design your email and just send it with the URL, or at least the token you need for verification. Okay, all right. And when you did this, then we want to get the user, but this time not with the email address. We want to check the verification token, and also here add token. And this is not a request object, we just have the token. So this would be it. Then we can check for the user. If we do not find one, then this means the token is invalid. So invalid token is a proper error message. And after that, we say user verified at is then datetime now. And we changed the user, so we have to save this again. Context, save changes async. And then here, let's say user verified. Okay. This should be it. Let's try that. I'm just restarting it manually just to be sure. We've got our verify method here. So let's try to log in again. Got our default email and password. And it still says not verified. Nice. And now here, you see it here, we have to add a token. So this is our endpoint. Now let's go back to the database. This is the token. I just copy it, paste it here. And let's remove the B first. Invalid token. Nice. That's totally correct. You see the complete URL now here with the query parameter. And now I add this character again, hit execute, user verified. We go to the database. We see no date here, but now we refresh and there we have it now. See it here, this is late. For me, it's late. Really. All right, and now we can try to log in again. Let's just hit execute. Welcome back. Nice. So this works already. The verification is done. And now the next step is the forgot password feature or reset password feature, whatever it is. Well, in essence, it's more like forgot because you can set a new password yourself. It's not reset automatically, but anyways, I think you get the idea. So this works, and now the endpoint for forgot password. The plan here is that we have a method or an endpoint for the user to tell the application, hey, I forgot my password, what should I do? And when this thing is called, we will create a password reset token. And then we need another endpoint where we will use this token to reset the password. All right. So first the forgot password endpoint, and this will look like that. We call this forgot password. Also here, and we enter the email address here, and then we say we want to get the user with the given email. We can say here user not found. Again, maybe too much information. We can also just return true, but nothing happens because the implementation here, the complete implementation, should actually send an email again to the user with the password reset token, because here now we say user password reset token is again create random token. And by the way, if you want to be absolutely sure, then in this method here, you would check if you find a string like that, so the created string already in the database. Probability is pretty small, I guess, but to be absolutely sure, you would create this string and then check, does this string already exist in the database? And if so, just run this method again and again and again and again. Might be the case that you run into an infinite loop, but again, this probability is also pretty tiny. Okay, just as a side note. All right, where we create random token, this should be it, and then we say user reset token expires is date time now, and then maybe you've got 1 day to do this, otherwise you have to call this again. Save changes async, and then we just say you may now reset your password. Nice. Let's test this. You see it here, password reset is null and the expiration date is also null. And here is our endpoint. It is tested user1 at example.com. We hit execute, user not found. Nice. And now You may now reset your password, and let's double check. There it is. Nice. And they're not the same. Whew, we're really lucky. Okay, not the same. Great. And we've got 1 day. All right. So we've got this endpoint covered. And now the last thing is actually resetting this stuff. And for that, first we need another model. And this is the last one. And we call this thing reset password request. And this is actually pretty similar to the register model. So let me copy this. And it's not an email address that we need. We need a token here. So this will be our reset token. And the rest is actually the same. So it's your job, or whoever is building the front end. It's the front end, the client's job, in essence, to create another form where we then send the token, but also enter the password and the confirm password value here. All right. Okay. So with that, we've got our request object. And now let's create the last endpoint. So I am copying this again. And now we call this reset password. Also here, reset password with the reset password requests. And now here we check for the it's called password reset token. This will be our request token. And now here, let's check if the user is null or user reset token expires is smaller than date time now. And if so, we just say invalid token. And then it looks similar to the registration, well, a little at least, because we say now create password hash again, because we've got a new password. So it'll be request password, and again out byte password hash and out byte password salt. All right, and with that, then we say user password almost user password hash is password hash, password salt, and then we also say password reset token is null, and the same for the reset token. This is also null. And then we save the changes. And here we then say password successfully reset. Okay. Let's try that. Last time, restart our app. There it is. And we say reset password. Try this out. And now what's happening when I just execute this? Invalid token. Absolutely true. Now let's say I copy this and I change my date to, where is it? Adjust date time, and change that to this thing here. Hit execute again. Invalid token, correct. So let's change the date back. Nice. And now I want to use this as a new password. Password successfully reset. And now let's double check with the login. We try this with the old password. Hit execute. Password is incorrect. And now string 1. hit execute, welcome back. Nice. And in just under an hour, we've got a verify email and forgot password implementation. I will put this to GitHub now. Check out the video description for the link, and then you can get the complete code. There you have it. Register user, log the user in, verify the email address, and then also a forgot password feature. I hope you liked it and you learned something, and I hope this resonated with you, and finally you got what you have been asking for a long time, I guess. If you liked it and learned something, I would really appreciate it if you click the like button, subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon. You know the drill. Thank you so much for that. It does make a difference. Don't forget to have a look at my newsletter. Would really appreciate that. For these videos here, you get them earlier in your inbox, and also you get early access and more information about upcoming courses and other stuff. So maybe this is interesting for you. And the last thing, again, my coffee tea mix. Thank you so much. I love you guys forever. Thank you so much for your support. Really means a lot to me. And now the last thing I can only say is maybe you want to watch some other tutorials. As I already said, maybe the JSON Web Token tutorial is interesting for you, how to register user and create JSON Web Tokens with claims and roles and all that stuff. So there is a series about that on my channel. And maybe there's also another video you are interested in. Then just click on this thing and watch this video and the next one and the next one and the next one to get all this .NET and Blazor WebAssembly knowledge. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope I see you next time. Take care.